Hello, I am Ron Baker, and welcome to Empowered at Last. Today we begin a conversation that I have been looking forward to since I began this podcast. I said when we began that this would be a safe place to talk about every single subject. And today's subject is one that intrigues most people as much as any other part of their lives. And yet, it's amazing how few people have a truly fulfilling, conscious, growing, intimate sex life. There are distinct reasons for that we're going to get to. First, for those of you who are new to me, let me just introduce the fact that for the last 25 years, I have been running a school of self-mastery in New York City. If you're going to be in a school of self-mastery, then you need to be in touch with the physical, emotional, mental, sexual, and spiritual parts of self. Every one of those parts of self is sacred. And yet, we live on a planet that has very little education about self worked naturally into the system. Think about all the years of school that you went to. How many of those courses ever talked about you, who you are, how to get in touch with you, how to evolve you, I went to school for 20 years, 3 degrees after high school, and then my own version of education after that. Not one course in all my years taught me a thing about who I am and what my potential is and how to tap that potential. This also includes sexuality. It's not even a subject that most people feel comfortable in, and it is vital that we begin to make that shift. So here we are. Let's talk about your sex life, perhaps in surprising ways. Did you know that how you're going to have a sex life that is passionate and fun and playful and free and deep and intimate and mostly fulfilling? Did you know that the way to have a fulfilling sex life is mostly determined by the relationship you're having with yourself? I don't think I've ever really heard that in the conversation over all my years of talking with people or listening to people's conversations around sex. And yet it is true. Every relationship in your life, whether it be with your most intimate physical partner, your friendships, your business partners, every one of those relationships is determined by the relationship you're having with yourself. You can't transcend what you are connected to and what is accessible to you when you get into a connection or a relationship with another person. How often do we hear people saying, well, my ideal partner would be this and this and this and this, and they're naming all kinds of qualities, and I think that is awesome to be aware of what's important to you in a relationship. But can you say, I have these same qualities? I can name and claim these same parts of me, and I'm so glad that I bring those to the table when I get into a connection with someone. All too often, in the world we live in, that doesn't have a lot of communication and education about self, leaves us in a wounded place where we look outside ourselves like wounded children still stuck looking to mommy and daddy to provide very specific things that we're not giving ourselves. Well, if we had gotten healthy information, we would have received all of that guidance and nurturing from them early on, and then they would have taught us into the phase that says, guess what? You are intended to become the authority in your own life, and you are intended to be in charge of all of your needs, physically, emotionally, mentally, sexually, and spiritually. And we are here to help and guide and teach you how. That's not the world I grew up in. And I have taught thousands of people around the world, and that is not the education that is typical. But I know it's possible because it's exactly what's happening in my School of Self-Mastery. It's exactly the kinds of comfortability that the community that has gathered for these decades has moved into and is quite comfortable with compared to where they started. Better and better, richer, freer, safer, clearer. Those are all very possible experiences. And so today we enter into the subject of sexuality. So what is sexuality? I believe it's the essence of who you are as a man or a woman, invested into many parts of your life. But we're just going to start with the one-on-one with another partner. The essence of who you are as a man or a woman, shared, accessible, free to connect with another person. Because I've been doing this for so long, I can make some pretty educated guesses that there's a lot to look forward to for most people in even getting connected to self. I have dedicated my life to teaching people how to do this. I know that it is far simpler, safer, and more nurturing than most people have ever imagined. And yet, without a clear education, a clear map, and nurturing tools that allow you to get in touch with yourself, even sexually, then most people are in limited starting places when they come into a relationship. And then the wound says, I need you to be the source of fulfilling me, inspiring me, making sure that every part of my life is wonderful. And we end up, whether we're conscious of it or not, making other people more responsible for our fulfillment than most people have ever guessed. I know that I was doing this for many years until I learned a more fulfilling, empowered way to be. So let's just begin by taking an inventory with you. How in touch would you say you are with yourself, the essence of who you are as a man or a woman? How well do you know yourself? How comfortable do you feel with yourself? How deeply are you in self-value? How much of yourself would you prefer to hide or to avoid? How safe do you feel sharing yourself authentically, or do you watch yourself quite closely and avoid talking about certain subjects, not trusting whether the other person will accept you or validate you versus judge you, shame you, reject you, not like you? The more you learn how to connect to self, acknowledge self, nurture self, value self, which includes the sexual self, the essence of your being, and the flow of sexual energy through your body, the more you feel safe with that process, the more you're going to be able to bring that to the relationships in your life, or just the primary one if you happen to be in a really long-term relationship. One of the reasons tons of people don't end up in really long-term relationships is because they don't know how to keep feeding those relationships. What do I mean? If you don't know yourself, how can you share more of yourself in the constant discovery of self to keep feeding the relationship? That is a very important part of having a healthy sexual relationship. All too often, not aware of self, looking out to someone else, wanting them to be the source of your fulfillment, like I used to do. Sex is used for a lot of wounded compensation. It's become so important in people's lives for reasons. First of all, there's not a healthy flow of energy moving through the body, and so it gets very trapped here in the lower body, and then it builds up and it wants release. Sex creates a release. Not only are you getting the pleasure of physical touch, if you feel safe with such a thing, but you also get a release, particularly at orgasm. That is a natural release that we have been given, and it is a sacred part of our lives. So often, people come together to have sex with another person, and they just work toward getting to that orgasm so they can experience the release of pressure and tension and get a wave of pleasure. For some people, many people quite honestly, who are not in touch with themselves and safe with themselves and loving their lives, sex becomes quite pressured to be the one thing where I get some pleasure, where I get some relief. A lot of people have told me over the years. Well, that's a ton of pressure on sex. That is a very primitive use of sex. I'm not making it bad and wrong. I'm just saying that if that is the limit and the cap that people have on their sexuality, they're stuck in a limited form with a lot to look forward to as you own and get in the flow with more of yourself. So some people use it as a release of tension. Other people use it as a form of being in control. I'm going to control, not necessarily another person, though some people do that. I'm going to control how I'm seen. I'm going to control something that I'm afraid of. I don't want to be alone. I need reassurance. And tons of people seek sexual partners as a validation of themselves. I need to know that I have worth and value. And yes, you do need to know that, but you need to learn how to claim it for yourself first and foremost. I need to know how to get validation of my worth and value, and I need to know that someone finds me attractive. Do you find your own physical self attractive? I'm not saying, do you look like a supermodel? I'm saying, do you value yourself and your body, and do you value and find yourself attractive as a person? It is baffling how many of us go through our lives not aware of our value, not validating and championing and acknowledging self, and then we want and look and search and yearn for someone else to do the job. I'm not willing to take the time to invest in myself. I need you to do it. And I'm going to put out whatever I have to, and I'm going to put on whatever I think you'll be attracted to, even if it's not my most authentic self, just to get your validation. There's nothing wrong or bad about this being a part of the learning curve in your sexual journey. Nothing wrong and bad. However, it's very limiting if you keep looking outside yourself, and then you're going to be on the roller coaster of whether you perceive you're getting validation or not getting validation. Yay, he or she likes me. Oh, they're so into me. Not this week. I don't know what happened. I wonder what I need to adjust. I wonder what is the problem. Or We might flip it in wounded defense and go, "You're not pleasing me anymore. You're not somehow fulfilling me consistently. Something must be wrong that you're doing because I don't feel safe to take any responsibility for what's out of balance or not working so well." I guarantee some of these statements and questions are likely to be a part of your journey. So I strongly suggest that you do an inventory in how to improve your sex life, part 1. And in this inventory, you merely ask the questions: how in touch am I with myself? How much do I value myself? How much, you get the point, self-focus. How comfortable am I giving and receiving? How comfortable am I being seen? How comfortable am I even looking in another person's eyes? How safe do I feel to be touched? Or are there lots of parameters of unsafety around your sexual journey? Who you are as a man or a woman in the world is what gets opened up when you choose to connect to another person. Even if you numb all that out, it's still a part of the negotiation. If you're numbing out and you're burying yourself and hiding yourself, looking for validation from another person is not going to do the trick, because you've already disconnected and invalidated parts of yourself. Oh my goodness, I love having this beginning conversation. And I guarantee you, we're going to evolve this conversation in part 2, 3, 4, and 25. I just want to begin to help you understand how to interrupt blame and shame, how to begin to interrupt disconnection from yourself. That implies that you learn how to connect to yourself, to nurture yourself, to claim yourself, to value yourself, to champion yourself. That will open you up to a free flow where a fulfilling, playful, fun, meaningful, passionate sex life is entirely possible. I'm going to leave you with this one as well. On my website are plenty of ways for you to explore a real process of getting in touch with yourself. It is so vital that everyone have a process if they're going to learn something. You can't go, "Oh, I realize I haven't been in touch with myself. I'll just do that now." Awesome for you to make a choice and to realize the need, but now you need clear information, a clear map, and the steps that will allow you to build this so that your sex life, as well as all the other facets of yourself, can become so much more fulfilling and free, connected to your most authentic self. So please go to ronbaker.net. If you don't have a process already, the course that I would mostly suggest for this particular thing is called Claiming Your Authentic Self, Level 1. So please let me hear from you. Please let me know if you enjoy beginning this conversation so that you can get on with improving and enhancing your sex life so that it becomes integrated and not so pressured, so that it becomes fun and enhancing, not the only source of pleasure or release of tension. It can be so much more than that, and I look forward to taking the steps with you on that journey. Thank you for tuning in. Please tell your friends about Empowered at Last, and I will see you again soon. Have a great week. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Before we close, I wanted to encourage a couple of things. Number one is to go to ronbaker.net. There you will find lots of clues for how you can deepen this conversation. You can also find a way to get the booklet, An Essential Guide to the 9 Nurturing Needs. This is going to be a core focus of how we're going to enhance the quality of your life from the inside out in all the episodes. So I encourage you to go there to get an overview of those 9 nurturing experiences that we all seek more than any other thing in our lives. I also want you to get involved in the conversation here. I really would like to talk about the things that are important to you, the things that you're concerned about or excited about. We live in a wacky world that is changing constantly. We need to learn to connect to ourselves, to count on ourselves, and to count on one another. So please either get involved at ronbaker.net or in the Facebook page, which is Empowered at Last with Ron Baker. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to deepening this conversation about life. And I close as always, choose well, live fully, and by all means, be good to you. Have a great week.